Hello, everyone. This is Joydeep. Welcome to Series 2 of Deep Dive. In this series, we're going to discuss architectural design and customer service. Today, we have Srikanth Reddy, co founder of 23 Degrees Design Shift, to discuss about design of community spaces and clubhouses in all our projects. He has co founded this firm along with his partners in 2010, and it has grown to become one of the most interesting practices across the country today. Let's get started. Hi, Srikanth.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome to Deep Dive.
Thank you.
So, Srikanth, you've become the go to architectural practice, especially in Hyderabad and other cities as well, to design F&B spaces, but you work across typologies in the architectural space. What is your design approach? It's quite unique and very interesting.
As a practice, we have a very basic thing that we are taught in college as a primary focal point in our design approach. We are very much, we would say that our whole practice is constantly focusing on uh, how to arrive at design solutions with our responses to context. That's our core, the center point of our design approach. So the model that we're seeing here today is a restaurant that we've done on road number 45, Jubilee Hills. It's a mix of modern technologies of construction and vernacular construction material. It's called Four Fathers. At the other end of the model that you're seeing, which is facing you, is the elevation. That's the approach side of the building. And as you can see, the whole structure is made in three canopies. The first canopy is where the drop off happens and the reception happens. That canopy extends out into the setback of the building, housing the semi-open seating area. The central canopy is the main structure, which is also off-centered and unequal slope lengths. This houses all the indoor activities like kitchen, service areas, indoor seating, air-conditioned seating, and kind of loud music sometimes when they do it. And the rear side is a small canopy here, which is also off-centered, very interestingly, and this houses the semi-open seating at the backyard. So this whole structure looks into a nice park, municipal park, onto the rear side of it. So the backyard is crucial business area for them. So we pushed the entire structure towards the road and created more open area towards the backside. And this structure is also a composite structure. When we say composite, it's a mix of steel and concrete both. So you have traditional concrete structure happening in the center canopy, and the front and rear canopies are steel structures uh, held by branching out columns, which are also unconventional to look at. So this is a very good mix of uh, modern construction techniques of steel and concrete, and the materiality of it is quite vernacular. The whole project is conceived in terracotta, as we say. So the floors are terracotta tiles, and walls are clay bricks, and the roof tiles are terracotta tiles. And there's beautiful play of light and shadow that happens in this project. The front and the rear canopies have glass insert terracotta tiles. So as the sun moves, the shadows also travel on the ground and on the vertical surfaces, making the space very dynamic, very engaging. If you experience this space in the morning versus afternoon versus evening, it transforms and it changes quite drastically. Uh, One another interesting aspect of this project is um, the entire indoor. The entire indoor is also made to transform to semi-open when it's good season to experience the external environment. So you have all the ground floor glazing systems that could slide open to a corner and make the entire indoor as a semi-open veranda space. That's kind of a paradox that we love to work on. Also, also the materiality of it, like I said, is all done in clay bricks and terracotta tile. The brick courses are done, the floor patterns are done, and the roof tiles with glass inserts render the space. So there's intricacy in detailing and simplicity in material. There is intricacy in the spatial quality and simplicity in the structural aspects. So this is kind of a very nice paradox that one can experience.
Irrespective of typology of the project, we are trying to make our responses to given context more and more appropriate, more and more focused, more and more refined, and more simplified. Having said that, when I say context, it's just not the site. It's all the parameters that define a project. That's all put together a context for us. So you can call it as budgets, you can call it as construction techniques, you can call it as restrictions on time of a project or advantages. Everything put together is a context for us, and we tend to keep our responses very crisp, very clean, and very appropriate to the point, to a given context, and that stays as a focal point of our approach.
So, how do you approach community spaces? They've evolved over the years. Let's go back to our childhood. We've all lived in colonies, and then we had one community park. From there, it's evolved into moving into small format apartments, and then large format apartments with clubhouses and play areas, etc. And now this township living. But in all of this, how do you see community spaces evolve, and what is the evolutionary approach that we need to take going forward?
Necessity for community space has always been there, like you said, since our childhood. We were all grown up in colonies, or open colonies, rather, you can call it as. But there's a certain sense of community for every few streets calling it as a colony, either by being founded by someone or funded by someone to develop that side of it. But there's a great deal of change in the format of the existence of colonies and the residential sectors today. And that has its, I think, the evolution was quite rapid and quite drastic in a very short period of time. And there hasn't been much thought gone into what should be the community spaces be like today compared to back in the time, because the growth happened so fast for all of us. So there has always been trial and error done by developers and architects, and a lot of things worked, a lot of things failed. And today we stand at a place when, as a practice in our office, we are right now working on a lot of community spaces for a lot of residential projects, and we are in a process of identifying what's right and what's not right in given time period today. That is coming from, we are doing a lot of looking back into what existed and what worked and what didn't work, and coming to inferences today. But yeah, the importance of community spaces is growing more and more today, and evolving and changing more and more today. Yeah.
Can you, since you mentioned that you're iterating these community spaces as you design them between projects, and from one project to another, can you take us through the flow of spaces apart from your general spaces which are required, and in the sense that that every community has them as a standard feature? What other spaces can be developed, and how do you think the spaces should flow from the time you enter the community to up to your residence, maybe, or even within the clubhouse?
I'm not sure if we should. I mean, the flow of spaces is completely dependent on the physical parameters of a given pocket for any community, for the community spaces. But I think we should more ponder on the point of what's the appropriateness of those spaces in today's context. Like we were talking earlier, that a lot of spaces have gone redundant. Like a library, a physical library. You don't find libraries happening in high streets today. You only have them in colleges. You don't have them in high streets. They're disappearing because all the books are converted into digital formats, and you have e-books to buy, and there's a lot of change in the whole activity of library. So having a library in a community, how far is it really appropriate, or would it have a future for it to exist in that community, is a question that we all have to think about. There are a lot of pockets, there are a lot of things like this that have become redundant in a lot of communities. Like when I mentioned that we are looking back into older projects and learning what to do and what not to do, these are the things that we are working on. For example, if you have a community that is in, say, a IT belt of any city, then you can expect a lot of young couples to exist in as a catchment, and then you can expect a lot of children to also be a part of community, and crush is needed in such locations. But if your community is little away from IT sector, you might not need crush, because you might not have major part of community as young couples. So there are a lot of things, that lot of spaces that are becoming quite irrelevant in today's context, and a lot of spaces are taking center stage. We never had co-working spaces as a necessity in communities earlier. Now, at least a 10-desk co-working space is something that everyone's looking at in all the communities. So there are new spaces coming up. So we are right now focusing on that direction of how to make the design program of a community more appropriate to today's times, and probably the program should also have a bandwidth to accommodate the future, or adapt itself to the future, flexible enough to adapt itself to the future.
We've spoken about the functional spaces of of the clubhouse or within the community. As we know now, customers are also craving for experiences within their community. What are some of the experiential spaces that we can create for them? It could be something like a community kitchen where they can all get together during the weekend. Any other things of that nature?
Yeah, a lot of communities are right now looking at spaces. I would say for existing communities are finding spaces, carving out spaces to conduct their common activities. Like you said, experiential kitchens or workshop places where, say, dance workshop is conducted or a martial arts workshop is conducted. They're all spaces where either experiential or skill development for the community is happening. They are all new age requirements coming into the program. So we can't really, I think at this moment, we really don't have a program to say experiential activities of this and this and this are necessary, because every community behaves different in terms of choosing what they want to experience. So I would say, if you have a space that is more volatile, that's more flexible, if you create spaces that are more flexible, more adaptable, more convertible, more transformable, then which are like a clean slate, that you can conduct any sort of an activity with certain ease of operating it, then I think it becomes more flexible and easy for communities to operate that way. Yeah.
We've also seen certain programs where the spaces are designed within the tower footprint, and they're spread across the entire community, decentralized, so to say, versus the usual centralized spaces that we create. What do you think works better? And if not works better, what are the advantages of each of these schemes?
It's the question of the size of community to choose between having either one centralized block or a space or decentralized amenities. It depends on the size of the community. If the community is large enough, like 10 blocks or 15 blocks with 25-30 acres of a campus, then certain amenities needs to be decentralized, which is more effective that ways. and certain amenities which doesn't need scale can be decentralized. Like lounges, interactive lounges, visitor lounges can be decentralized into the block footprints. If you're talking about pocket size, if you're talking about flats between 1500 to 2000 square feet of built up area, their drawing rooms would not be too large. They might not have living and drawing separate for family living and drawing. Even if it is identified in the drawing as living room and drawing room, it's just one single room. So these kind of in these kind of projects, people prefer to meet their visitors in the common lounges. So if they're decentralized under the towers, they're more appropriate as a design solution than centralizing that activity into a community clubhouse. Lot of things like this, like your board games or indoor games, can be decentralized. Not everything can be decentralized, but certain things like this can be decentralized. And the feasibility of this is completely dependent on size of community. If it is a small intimate community of 2-3 blocks, even if it is high rise, if it is a small community of 2-3 blocks, then probably 2-3 towers, then probably decentralization is not a design solution.
Coming to the aesthetics of a clubhouse, right? And also the immediate environment around a clubhouse. In quite a few apartment buildings and design where we see the clubhouse is usually housed in one corner or in some space that they've carved out, but there's no free flow of movement into the OSR area or the green area that is earmarked in the entire community. How do you think the approach to the positioning of the clubhouse within the community has to be?
I think it's a ripple effect. If we try to understand reasons why clubhouses are pushed to corners, is because we have unlimited FSI and then builders are trying to reap maximum square footage. So in the exercise of getting maximum square footage, whichever odd corners are left in the site, clubhouses are pushed to those corners. They're never given a center stage, never. So you can understand the importance given to it in the master planning itself. So the importance is given to maximize the saleable area, and then whichever pockets that are left out, which doesn't come in help to maximize square footage, those pockets are pushed out as amenities. And so you find a lot of communities with clubhouse being pushed to a corner. And the other approach and the other set of projects that we see today, if we talk about Hyderabad, is clubhouse being the forefront of the community. It is on the face as and it is a marketing point for the project. So either they see amenities as clubhouse as a marketing point, or they push the clubhouse to a corner which doesn't hamper their yield of square footage. But like you said, it needs to be given due importance about its positioning. If it is accessible to all the residents, equally accessible, or some towers it's close by, some towers they have to walk too far, or what's the or the centralization and decentralization aspect needs to be thought of in the master plan level. Yes, marketing is important, yield is also important, but doesn't mean that we really don't give such importance to the amenities aspect. Coming to aesthetic of a clubhouse, we've seen historically we've seen communities building one or the other structure as a pride of their existence. Previously, we've seen villages building temples. The gopuram used to build gopurams that high. It's an indirect or a direct way to depict the pride of that village, and we've seen that with cities building forts and gateways. So clubhouses, amenities block for any community signifies the pride in a certain way. If it is conceived like that, it can stand out to be a pride of that community in terms of architectural character. Aesthetic is very subjective, and when you are talking about aesthetic for a public space, I think it loses its ground. Aesthetic loses its ground because it's not, you can't really put a certain aesthetic to a public space. It needs to be generic, so it loses its ground. What stays relevant is the character of the building. If it is monumental, if it is thought provoking, if it is striking the imagination, if the resident is proud about having that building in his community.
Since you've mentioned that the entire material place has to be generic, what do you think we should use in clubhouses so that it is easy to maintain and then it ages well? See, typically what happens is sometimes when we use certain materials, say on walls or on ceilings, it looks great for the first 2-3 years and then it doesn't age too well. Plus, it's not maintenance friendly. What kind of material play should be in a clubhouse?
Clubhouse gets categorized into public space, like we were talking, and whatever we use in terms of material, whatever we attribute the architectural value to the project, should be of a timeless character, because it is going to exist there permanently. We see today in most of the public spaces have gone impermanent. Even residential pockets are being conceived with such impermanence in conception itself. But fortunately, there are these kind of buildings still left which are conceived to be permanently there, like the community spaces. So any material choice should also follow such parameter of being there permanently. So whatever material that helps or whatever material that can exist without much of maintenance issues should be a choice. And most often, if we understand the logic behind the maintenance, any material that is heavily processed will ask for high maintenance. Any material that is less processed will ask for low maintenance. As simple as that. So if you're talking about, say, a tile, it's the highest level of processing of stone powder, you can call it. Whereas a natural stone or a stone is the lowest level of processing, which is just cutting and polishing. But tile is about a lot of things mixed and casted and manufactured. So any material of that sorts asks for a lot of maintenance. So if we stick to basic level of processing of all the construction material, they age well, they age gracefully, and they ask for less maintenance as they get older. Yes, of course, there's no material that is maintenance free. Maintenance free is a myth. But yes, they ask for less maintenance. Building exactly behaves like human body. If it is winter, you apply moisturizer. If it is summer, you tend to wear lighter clothes because your skin breathes and you do take care of your skin. Similarly, building envelope, material on the building also behaves as per the season, and we'll have to take care of things accordingly.
It's interesting that you mentioned the envelope of the building. Most times you see that, these buildings which do not have a very large footprint, still being designed in the same sense that, it's going to be powered completely, lot of artificial lighting, the ACs are running all the time. What can we do to naturally cool the building, to allow more ventilation to come in, to reduce the power consumption of those buildings? And like you mentioned, they're permanent buildings. So how can we design it in a way that it responds to these aspects?
Past couple of clubhouses that we worked on, where the community is, the footprint of the clubhouse is predefined at the master plan level, and the client came to us just for the clubhouse design. In such projects, not the project where we're designing the whole community, but such projects which came to us only for the clubhouse, I've seen that these clubhouses are sandwiched or surrounded by towers in all the directions. So if someone is working out in a gym at a second level, or if someone is swimming in a pool at the top level or a bottom level, if someone is doing yoga, and if the envelope of clubhouse is permeable with light and air, that means it is also going to be open for views. That means there is going to be a lot of privacy issues of conducting activities within the clubhouse. It can also be the other way around. If there is a cafe in a clubhouse, or if there is a congregation space, or if there's a games area with a deck and balcony, and there's a lot of youngsters sitting there, and they're looking at the balconies of the towers around, is also a privacy issue for the towers. So most of the clubhouses that we see, which are sandwiched amongst the towers, even if there's openable glazing system that's given for air passage, even if there's there are a lot of openings to allow natural light to enter, they don't open the glazing systems, they don't open the curtains because of these privacy issues. And they tend to make the whole building be artificially powered, artificially lit, air conditioned, because they cannot open the windows and the curtains. So making the building efficient in terms of power consumption starts at a master planning level of where to place the clubhouse, and the clubhouse's external envelope design. If there's no choice for someone than to place it amongst blocks, if there's no choice, if certain site doesn't permit, then architect can be intelligent and smart in a way that he designs the envelope in a way that there's no privacy issue between the blocks and the activities in the clubhouse, and still have a lot of light and air passing into the clubhouse. Architects in India, rather I would say architects in all the third world nations, it's quite normal for us to design spaces that has good ventilation and shading devices, and because we never had the affordability for air conditioning, right? We were all trained to design efficient buildings, but the problems popping up in the urban setup are forcing the buildings to become air conditioned. It's not that the buildings are not designed well, it's that the multiple layered issues like this that are forcing, of course, not every architect, not every builder is doing a very efficient building that ways. Like you said, clubhouse need not be like a completely opaque building towards the external environment. It need not be. It has to be permeable. It has to have a dialogue with the external environment.
You had just mentioned how architects in third world nations used to design buildings. If you see the old textile mill building in Ahmedabad, there's a lovely brise soleil that's there. And then all the buildings that were designed in the 90s, 80s, they had some very unique, distinguished architectural features. We don't see them anywhere now in the urban context. Mm-hmm. Where do you think we are going, and why do you think all of these were lost? Because they were great practices.
Sadly, I think it's the real estate. Because if you want the built environment to negotiate with the external environment, then you need certain amount of space along the periphery of the building to do it. Like the building, the mill owners building in Ahmedabad has considerable width dedicated for the shading devices around the building. That calls for dedicating certain real estate to it. And so one point is that uh, it's 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 expensive in terms of dealing with real estate until the cost aspect comes into place, until the execution of it. Time aspect comes into place for execution of it. Most of the public buildings today choose very fast, quick installation time kind of techniques and construction techniques as a building envelope. And also the other factors that influence buildings to look a certain way and be built a certain way. It's the urban setup as well that dictates buildings to look and be a certain way. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's unfortunate that we don't see a lot of buildings being responsive to the external environment that much today in our urban setup. We need more buildings to all the buildings to be like that ideally. But yeah, so I think I can only think of time, real estate, budgets as factors that are influencing buildings not to be climate responsive. Yeah.
But with the current focus on green buildings and practices, do you think all of these will come back into design? Because if you see material play, which we discussed earlier, see terracottas coming back, limestones coming back, what we used to use in the 80s and 90s. Do you think even these architectural practices will come back, rather design practices?
With all the dialogue that's happening in the aspect of green buildings and sustainability and all that, we are seeing a lot of techniques emerging out to offset the consumption of power. Lot of techniques coming out of in such fields, and a lot of material that is new age material that is coming into market, which with a certain green building certification to it, talking about zero carbon footprint material or things like that. But we are not seeing the direction of going back to less processed material. We are not seeing that happening much. But yeah, there's a lot of new age materials that are coming out, which are usually byproducts of industries and products that are manufactured with very less carbon footprint. I really doubt on the longevity of these products in any built environment. No one talks about that, and no one's even documenting, because these products started coming into market long back, about 10-15 years back. No one talks about all this longevity of these products. So the lesser the shelf life, the more we produce, and I don't know how it is sustainable. Even if the production is in lines with sustainable aspects and green aspects, if it doesn't have shelf life, that particular product, and it tends to get manufactured more and tends to get used more. Yeah. But all the age-old techniques of construction, which are, I should say, they're labor intensive and material intensive, they all have longer shelf life. We are seeing institutions that are built in early 60s and 70s still intact, and in fact more beautiful today than the institutions that were built in last 15-20 years.
So moving on to common spaces within the building or within any community, how do you create these small nooks within the community to foster interaction between residents? Or it could be the other side of it also. If you want some spaces which a person wants to spend alone, how do you create these spaces And what kind of spaces have you created in buildings that you've designed?
Aspect of interaction is primary in every space that a community clubhouse has, because I don't think there is a necessity for private spaces in a community club. At least an activity is at least with two people together in a community clubhouse. If someone is playing games or someone is playing in a shuttle court, so every activity makes interaction is the core of every activity. If two people are playing, it's a kind of interaction. If a group of 2 or 3 are in a cafeteria, it's a kind of interaction. If a group of 10 are attending a yoga session, it's a kind of interaction. So interaction is the key. Without that aspect, the clubhouse doesn't exist. How do we make it even more conducive is the point, I think. And yeah, I think the architecture of the building, the design of the building, and how the program is laid out defines how well we foster this interaction. But yeah, it becomes a key point in the whole design aspect as well for us. We see a lot of this happening with a certain age group. Um, uh, if you are talking about retired, elderly, and retired, they, they they use these spaces for their interaction quite a bit, like the common waiting areas and the lawns and the gazebos in the landscape areas is predominantly used by the elderly for to sit at a particular point of time and talk and spend time there. And we see a lot of this interaction happening amongst the young crowd as well, because the working class crowd is busy. They come at a particular time, they use certain activities, they use the clubhouse for certain activities, and they leave because they have a tight schedule in their day to day life. But it's the young generation and the elderly who use these pockets quite a bit, interactive pockets. And if the space is designed to be more conducive for such age groups, there's more possibility for them to cherish the space and use the space.
So, beyond the clubhouse footprint and the building footprint, what kind of common spaces can we design? Small nooks, small interaction spaces, some convenience spaces. These will foster interaction, or people can spend some time alone there. So, any ideas regarding that?
Interactive spaces in open areas uh, started, I think they came a long back in the form of gazebos and small sit out areas, but they are very generic. But if a site has got some views out, if a site is elevated up and has got some views out, then probably we can maximize the capacity of having that thing in form of creating those viewing decks or towards the view side. And if the site has got larger open space like the lawns, then probably these small interaction pockets or self-reflection pockets can be tucked away into the landscape on the peripheries, because like we were talking, it's not all the time in their office or in their home. They are in about 1,000 square feet of space. They don't feel the space, and their interaction with the external environment is less. So these pockets probably can help uh, establish that much stronger. But we are seeing a lot of activities that used to be indoors flowing out into the outdoors now, like the outdoor gyms have become quite prevalent. Um, Flea markets have become quite prevalent. There's a lot of activities that used to be indoors that are flowing out now into the outdoors. That itself tells that people are looking to spend a lot of time in the outdoors, preferring to spend a lot of time outdoors than indoors. So any kind of seating areas, covered seating areas, for a group of 2 or 4 or 8 or 10, which has a vantage Either it is looking into sports fields, or it is looking into lawns or some viewpoint which has an anchor. If we could identify such areas and design these pockets, nicely arrange these pockets, then it can be of a great value addition to the open areas.
Right. So you've spoken about decks just now, and then we see that there's this new design trend to bring an entire environmental floor. That's what they're calling it. And there are viewing decks there. They're bringing the entire green spaces into the middle of the building footprint. What's your view on that?
One, they add a lot of beauty to the skyline. Two, in our city at least, we're seeing buildings as large towers with punctures into them and no more architectural character beyond it. We see metal railings and large walls with punctures in series. And then these are endless. Now the entire skyline is filled with such buildings with architectural character. Now these bring in a fresh breath into the skyline. They look different from the others. They are breaking the monotony of the skyline. It also comes with a lot of challenges of maintenance, and especially in our market where skill in construction is very limited. But I think the choice to have the amenities lifted up into the air, or the greens lifted up into the air or be on the ground, should totally depend on the size of the community or the size of the plot. If someone has availability of land, then I think all these green pockets, the entire environment should rest on the land or on the podium. If someone has, if any project has very tight land parcel, and then probably they can look at elevating all the amenities and the green pockets into the air. It's also interesting to see if these things are also decentralized in the heights, not just one single deck, or because the building could look even more interestingly sculpted from the exterior. And probably if there is a logical way to decentralize these greens.
Once we construct all these buildings, there are two challenges that residents face. One is maintenance of these spaces, and second is the cost for maintenance of these spaces. Is there any way to create revenue generating spaces in the clubhouse or any other common spaces within the project?
Absolutely, I think it's necessary also. If a community is of a particular size, say about 1,000 flats, 1,000 units community, then there's a list of amenities that can be feasible for such given capacity of community. Not everything would be feasible in their amenities block. If that block moves to the periphery or the access road, and if it is made accessible to it is open to public to access it, then a lot of amenities gets feasible in that. So and the residents doesn't need to step out of the community for any kind of facility. Two, it also helps generate some revenue for the association to maintain the entire community, and it helps in maintenance of the community. Of course, there's corpus fund, there's maintenance charge that is collected, but this could be a very big help in terms of making it easy to maintain. Yeah, but I think it's wherever there is possibility of doing this, every developer should look at maximizing the capacity of the amenities block in terms of access and feasibility.
So can we take an approach like, you've seen the Bangalore International Center. It's an extremely programmable space, and there are programs running almost 300 days a year. How can we bring in that approach to a clubhouse? A, it helps in revenue generation. Second, it creates a nice flexi space. So how should be our approach if we want to plan a space like that or reimagine the clubhouse?
ideal case scenario. If there's a situation where there's a project that is on such main road with such scale, and if someone is not doing it, that's a loss. But I think programmable, as in, can I get a bit more
Like certain events which are there, it could be a book reading event, it could be a cultural event, it could be small conference. This is not in context with apartments, but also we do plotted developments. Now there's farmhouse development, there's there are certain villas developments or township developments where the clubhouse or the common space is housed in a certain area. So in that context, how do we approach clubhouse design?
Yeah, I think that has to become in the context of, say, plotted developments, or where the amenities area is not dependent solely on the user of the community, because you don't know when everyone finishes building their houses and staying there. It has to be much more generic and open to come in to the rest of the city to come and use. I think there are a couple of clubhouses like that in our city also, which are done, even if they're a little away from the city. The building program is in a way that there's a lot of activity that is invited from the city to come and be conducted in them. And yeah, that's like we spoke earlier. If the spaces inside the building are generic, flexible, and transformative, then it opens up possibilities of any kind of activity to happen. And it will completely, beyond this, it will be completely the capacity of the operator to conduct as many as he can. But I think these are the key features. If they need to be flexible, the spaces need to be flexible, adaptable, transformable, and I think multifunctional.
Thank you, Srikanth. Thank you
Thank
for being on Deep Dive.
Yeah.
This is very interesting and a lot of insights for all our members. Thanks again. That was Srikanth Reddy giving us the nuances of clubhouse and common space design. Stay tuned for the next episode with Mr. Mohan Rao from Integrated Design. Thank you.